Hello and welcome to Lands Unknown. My name is Will, and today we are going to be doing a close climate study of the Tyche Sea Basin, just to mix things up a little bit. I just wanted to show prior to, there we go, prior to getting started on the Tyche Sea Basin, I continue to work on the Yales. You can compare the before and the after. I still think they're a little too dark, so I'm probably going to add in some highlights, lighten them up a bit. Hello, Kate. Thank you for joining me this morning. Morning for me, anyway. So yeah, these are the Yales that I've been working on the past two streams. I've been doing a lot of creature design, and I just want to take a bit of a break from that. And while I was working on the footnotes, I got excited for doing some more physical geography stuff. So take a bit of a switch and work on the climate for a little bit. Okay, so yeah, let's just switch over to that there. Excellent. How are you doing this morning, Kate? Oh, hello, Elta. All right, just getting everything set up over here. I've got two stations, one for recording myself and then one for working on the iPad. So we're just going to go out to the gallery. So the idea eventually is I'll create a sort of faux satellite image of the Tyche Basin, similar to this one here. Happy to finally make it one of these. Well, I'm happy to finally have you. I don't know if Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific is great for everyone. I'll probably run another total brain fart, another poll at some point to figure it out. I may also start doing Patreon streams. So Patreon streams one day, and then public streams another day. To see how that works out. So here we have the Tyche Basin in a handful of different projections. Because, we're not going to be working on the equirectangular map because it distorts things, sometimes pretty significantly. Instead, I look at different projections depending on the degree to which they warp the map that we're looking at. At the bottom here, we have the orthographic projection. So to generate these, I took an equirectangular map and put it into GProjector. In GProjector, you can then cycle through different projections that you'd want to use. You can change how much is being shown. You can also change the angle that you're looking at it, so how high you're looking at it from. And what I'm trying to do, since this is the orthographic projection, I'm looking for something that doesn't distort the main features that I'm interested in showing. So for the Tyche Sea, so some of the really, let's add in, that needs to go up. Come on, you got to work with me, Procreate. Thank you. All right. Last thing I was doing was working on those Yales last night. All right, so I think maintaining the distinct character of the super terrain that was ripped off from this coast here is going to be really important. I think that's the most important aspect to maintain for me. So I went through and I picked a couple projections, the Albers projection and Lambert projection, which are both really good at maintaining, at minimizing the amount of distortion and warping there is for for land masses that are in like the mid latitudes, between like 20 and 60 degrees latitude. So if this is the orthographic down here, that is not very clear. And that's the orthographic one down there. We also have the Lambert up here and Albers over here. I believe, yes. Right. So one thing that we can notice about these projections right off the bat, something to clarify. The reason why I wouldn't use the orthographic projection is because it is not flat. So we are making a 2D map and working on the iPad, so I do want to flatten it out. But in flattening out, there's always going to be distortion. So I want to pick one that has minimal distortion. And so for both of these conical projections, I think Lambert we can look at. Both of them are going to have a bit of distortion in the north, right? If we compare them, they're both a little squished, which is fine. That's going to happen, especially at the higher latitudes. Though, I mean, you've got the equator here, so 15, 30, 45. Like, it's not, and I believe we are focusing in on 20 degrees east and like 28 degrees north or something like that. So there's going to be some distortion. And we can also, looking kind of head on at the equator is also going to, distort Arukia a bit as well, because we can see the way that the equator curves. But we're not too interested in Arukia. We're focused on the Tyche Basin. So one thing that I wanted to maintain was the main super terrain and how that landmass looks. And I think the orthographic one, kind of maintains that shape. I think Albers maintains the orthographic shape. For Lambert, it does, it is a little off compared to the orthographic. It's a little bit more off than the Albers. So I am going to decide to go with the Albers. I think you can, I can see it a bit more clear in the climate maps, just the way that it's shifted ever so slightly. So if we go with the Albers, which I had decided in advance so that we could have a little bit of movie magic here. Now, thinking about how I want to present the map and how I want to work on it, if, bringing this up, I simply decided to take this Albers map and then, just try to fill up the screen with it. We'd have a bit of an issue. Let's get the Lambert projection out of the way. Because we have suddenly a lot more stuff to deal with. Like all the stuff over on Zalea over here. And we have a bunch of stuff over here on Lanea that I'm not really interested in working on for this specific climate study. So what are we going to do? To work on it, I decided that I was going to sort of decrease the size of the map that I wanted to work with, and the easiest way for me to do that was to switch to this sort of vertical position on the iPad, but also making this more of a square, just to get rid of all the stuff that I don't need to deal with, right? So we're going to be looking explicitly on this side. So we're going to be, looking at the kind of cis-metrine side of the basin of Zalea. We're going to be looking at the cis-palomine side. So the palomars are up here. So the cis-palomine side of Lanea. And I haven't given these hills a name. They're quite an old formation, but we're going to be staying on the Tyche side of that. And something I've adopted just on my own, I think it's made its way into a couple videos, but anything near the Tyche will be the cis side, and anything away from the Tyche is the trans side. So this side over here would be trans-metrine Zalea, and along this coast is cis-metrine Zalea. And I decided on that partially because the Tyche here is kind of a super Mediterranean, which, if anyone caught Artifexia and Edgar's stream yesterday, it is very sad about his retirement. I had the idea of creating videos after I had worked with him on making the temperature map and consulting on the climate process for the World Builders log, and I was excited to go forward because I do physical geography, but I'm also a human geographer, so I was excited for after the speculative bio series, working on some spec culture building stuff. But people gotta work with the builder, know their own capacity, and know when it's time to step back. And he's still going to be doing those Friday streams, which he wasn't sure if he was going to do them publicly, but they're about 25 people pretty consistently, and that seems to be a manageable number. So I think he's going to keep doing those streams. So he's not going to be gone. He's also going to be going to conferences. There's going to be another world building festival in September and stuff like that. So I'm sure he's going to be participating in all that kind of stuff. But on his stream, he was building a supercontinent, and he was talking about how he really likes these large basins in the middle of the supercontinents. Talking about Basera after he checked out the first chapter of the Spec Atlas. And I will say too that Bibloridian's Tira 292b has a similar shape. It's kind of like an upside, like a flipped Basera in a way, because it's mostly in the southern hemisphere. It has a very large basin over the equator, and that's really useful for bringing in precipitation, especially because Tira is a much hotter world, and if that basin wasn't there, there would be much more expansive deserts throughout the continent. So yes, we have this nice Mediterranean. So since it is the middle of Basera, separating eastern and western Basera, going to be having it be, the middle of the world, and everything on its side of these mountain ranges is going to be the, use the cis monkier side, at least until I figure something else out. Oh yeah, and we have Arukia down here, so this will be the cis-coterine side of Arukia, because we do have a little bit of Arukia, this little part right here bordering that basin. And just about changing the frame of your map, think about what you're working on. I was doing a similar thing. Oh, I don't need to go out. I already have it here. So I was doing a similar thing with Arukia here. I wanted to work on the kind of Zullen portion as little as possible. So I did manage to kind of get some of it in, up there. So if I must, I will work on this part of Zalea, and then I may just do Zalea next as the close climate study. Hello, Okure 93. Let's see how well I did. And if any of y'all, Okuridge. Okay. Oh, I see what you're doing with the J. Having been IPA pilled, I usually default to the J character being the approximate. Close enough. That's fair. If you post the IPA, I'll definitely get it. And if anyone has seen the footnote video that came out Friday, let me know what you think of the footnote video. I rewatched my first video and then that one, and I think that one is definitely better. I'm certainly learning. So I'm going to elevate this up here, and I do want to, let's make those appear. Hey Jake, you are here before the very end this time. Oh, I understand. I didn't have anything going on last time. I know, people aren't really active around the holidays, but I thought I would just jump on and say hello to folks. And I got to work on the art and stuff anyway for the next video. And I have another critter that I finished, and that one's up for members on Patreon and Ko-fi as an update for December, I believe. Came out on the 22nd. You can also follow the Patreon or the Ko-fi, I think, for free. So you can be a free Patreon member, and you will receive updates on when stuff comes out. You'll also receive, updates for live streams and those sorts of things. It may be a more reliable way to see when live streams are happening and when videos are coming out. So if we are... All right, so just getting a bit of an overview here. This is from the temperature map. So in the Devian equivalent of January, I have not named the months yet. Once we get some conlangs, we'll come up with some season or month names. That's a little bit... was a little bit bigger. It's not too annoying. I will change that later. So most of it is within... I just need to throw up my... Oh, and Happy New Year, everyone. Just sort of passed me by. For me, the new year is just, new semester. More physical geography to instruct, which is fun. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed instructing physical geography. Doesn't really hold the same significance, though. Okay. So the northern part of the basin, since, I'm just going to write over the the temperature map, and it will be fine. How's that look? Great. Maybe we can use a different brush for that. Thinking Studio Pen. Ooh, that's nice. Okay. So we have the 18-degree isotherm is here for the winter. So anything down here is going to be A, most likely. And then we've got 12. Let's change to black. I think that'll be better. Or blue. Like a very saturated blue probably could work. Oh yeah, that's great. Especially for notes, like, you know, when you're doing all the rough draft stuff, you know, making sure that it's just visible and apparent to you. So that's where our 0-degree isotherm starts. So for stuff between 12 and 18, things are going to hit 0 in the winter, you know, just over maybe 2.5 kilometers. And yeah. Yeah. I'll put that down here. I mean, it's going to change, of course. I mean, in the south, it's going to be closer to 3, but. And it's probably going to, in the south, it's going to be 1 kilometer to 12 degrees, which is probably where we're going to start seeing the Tyche Sea stuff. Yeah, but that's easy enough. Okay. Let's get rid. So, for the winter, we do have the Polomian ice sheet, which, you know, we can see the see these cold isotherms bunching up against the inside of the Tyche. And what's important for the Tyche, and I'll, you know, let's do the January surface stuff. What's interesting for the Tyche is that we've got warm water coming. Oh, there we go. And let's change the color to there. That's a good one. So we have warm waters because we've got cold current coming down there, and then warm water, you know, kind of cycling through here. And then we've got water going down that way and cycling up this way. But yes, we have warm water coming in from the Agathe through these different channels here. And because this basin is, you know, between, what's that, 15 and 45, it's receiving a decent amount of insulation all year round, and it's also not receiving any polar water. There's no cool water coming in to this basin. And what that means is that it's going to stay relatively warm throughout the year. And what is interesting about this, especially on a glacial world, and, you know, this is something that I talk about in the footnote, is that you're going to see less precipitation, especially, you know, in some parts of the mid latitudes, especially the high latitudes. And that is because of the cooler temperatures. Precipitation originates, by and large, from ocean and sea evaporation. These moist, humid maritime bodies of air then move over the continent and, condense, releasing the precipitation. So having this warm basin at a relatively higher latitude is going to, really bring a lot of precipitation in the summer and the winter in places that would otherwise be desert. Like if there was just land, um, if there was just land in here between Zalea and Lanea, yeah, much of Lanea would be a desert. A lot of this stuff up here would be exceptionally arid, and then a big portion of this would also be arid. You also wouldn't get, yeah, so including the Tyche to kind of mitigate those things was something I wanted right from the get-go. And, super important when you're thinking about your own world building and when you're planning out what kind of world you want to consider what climates you're going to eventually end up with. Did I start doodling all over the... Yeah, I did start doodling over it. Okay. I'm just going to go back a bit. That is when I should have used another layer. You need to have good layer discipline. I also need good mic discipline. I think in the last live, sometimes I make like a clicking noise to myself with my tongue, and I was just absentmindedly doing that. But I talked to George over at Conlangery, and he encouraged mic discipline. So I'm doing my best for mic discipline, especially because I got a new mic for Christmas. It's a Rode Pod mic, and I am, I use that for the new footnotes. I'm still figuring out how to do it. The technology is better than I am at being recorded. So I need to level up in order to use it properly. But I think I'm getting there. I think every video is going to be better than the last one. So yeah, so we got in January, coming down from those very cold temperatures that we were discussing from the Palomean ice sheets, we've got katabatic winds. And these katabatic winds can reach hurricane speeds. So, 90, 100 kilometers an hour. Pretty devastating. When it hits the relatively warmer waters of the Tyche, you get fog and storms, but because the Tyche is warmer than the surrounding land, we're going to have a low pressure effect. And this is something that actually happens in the Mediterranean, right? So the Mediterranean, rather than having, high pressure like the land around it in the winter, it instead has lower pressure. And that causes the winds in the Mediterranean to move in the distinct way they do to provide that CS climate to the region. And of course, the Mediterranean also moderates the temperatures so that the coasts of the Mediterranean have a C climate rather than a B climate, because there are some areas in North Africa in particular that do receive a decent amount of precipitation during the winter, like the other parts of the Mediterranean, but because they're further from the coast, they're more continental. To use our continentality scale, they would be like subcontinental. They get much hotter during the summer because they're further away. No, they get much. Yeah, they do get much hotter during the summer, which is why they have a higher annual average temperature. But it is because they're further away from the water, which is moderating the effects of temperature. So as the cold winds hit here, turns into fog, and we also start getting some storms. So when we're looking at these maps and you're looking at these winds, this is an average. There's actually a lot of variation that happens on a daily basis, weekly basis. I'm just going to check null. Here we go. I'm going to check null school for a sec, just to see what the Mediterranean looks like at this very moment. So if we can get an example, can it show? Yeah, okay. Let's just share that. Invite, share screen, share screen. Allow. All right, let's add that one to the stage. Oh, we got to remove that from the stage. And then add that to the stage. Oh no! Infinite StreamYard. Okay, so from this map here, usually the winds are moving across, they're westerly winds moving across. But here we can see, for today, we've got winds moving. We've got southerly winds moving across from certain areas. So we've got the high pressure from the land moving wind over the water, and then that is swirling in a clockwise motion to the north. We've got another low pressure system over here. So these low pressure systems are going to be moving through the Mediterranean. And when these low pressure systems move, they're going to be taking precipitation with them. It's not going to be a static system. Much like if we take a snapshot of the North Sea, of the Northern Atlantic here, we can see low pressure zones here, but this low pressure zone is not going to be stable. It is going to be meandering around, or it is going to eventually dissipate, and then another low pressure system is going to develop. So what we're trying to do with these pressure maps is have a average and kind of have a good understanding of where the main surface winds are moving, where they generally tend to move, as well as where the moisture is coming from. And that will allow us to understand for our equivalents of January and July when we are getting the majority of the precipitation. So, as an example, during the summer here, we have a high pressure system over the Tyche, and that's because the land around the Tyche is relatively warmer. It is the summer, the peak of summer, so there's going to be a lot of insulation. And of course, as I discussed in the north, along here, we have a low pressure trough because the high albedo of the ice sheet and the relatively lower albedo of the ground cover produces this temperature difference, which is going to cause low pressure systems to form. And it is also stuck between the high pressure of the ice sheet and the high pressure of the Tyche. So we do have this low pressure trough form. Maybe it wouldn't be as dark as this, perhaps if I had been, more moderate, I could have made it this blue color with some pockets of purple, just kind of drive it. But these maps are also for myself while I'm designing the climate to have, that kind of strong definitive understanding of where the winds are moving to make those decisions on temperature. If you've taken art classes or something like that, you want to have strong lines. You want to have definitive lines. Good line art. It doesn't have like little sketches and stuff like that. Like you'd much rather have like a very strong line that kind of communicates the form. And in that way too, when you're doing your winds and your pressure and your temperature, you want to have those that strong differentiation between different pressure areas. You want to have very strong wind lines so that you are sure where your winds are going and that you make that choice. At some point, I want to do a footnote that actually talks about decision making during world building. Because for me, art, and if you think of world building as a hobby, as an art, it comes down to the decisions that you get to make. That is the very interesting part of world building. And when you suspend your decisions, or you kind of waffle on your decisions, you're taking those choices away. So having those, very deliberate choices is an interesting part of the project. And of course, someone else could take the map and make a different choice with the pressure. I mean, they could run it through EPS or ClimateSim and come up with something different. Someone else could go through a manual method of doing surface pressure and come out with something different. But what's important is that you have a degree of verisimilitude. Sometimes I see folks asking like, "Oh, are my ocean currents accurate?" And my usual response to that is like, accurate to what, right? Because we don't actually have your world, fully realized where we can compare your ocean currents on your map to the ocean currents of your world. What we're doing, ideally, is working through a process that gives a sense of verisimilitude, that says, okay, this is our understanding of, how Earth's currents work. If we take that and we apply it heuristically or through a different modeling practice, whether it's a manual or a digital method, this is what we come out with. People could always do it differently. There are a lot of variables, and people can take different variables into account. For some of the maps that I used in the footnotes video, especially looking at the which one in particular? Well, I mean, there's the Tierney map of the temperature difference from the pre-industrial average, and there's the regional map with how average annual temperature would have been different compared to the pre-industrial average, and other scholars have their own models of regional difference. I also cited Annan et al., and for them, they think that the last glacial maximum was not as cool as Tierney's modeling did. I think theirs has the last glacial maximum around 9 degrees Celsius, while Tierney's is closer to like 7.5 degrees. So, different models are going to take different things into account. The other one I was thinking of was that wind map with the Laurentide ice sheet and the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see there's, the low pressure trough, and you can see the precipitation coming off the Gulf of Mexico. There were, in that paper, I think there are like 9 different models that they use. And one of the ones I picked was one of the stronger models. And I liked it because it showed something I was going for, which was this very strong effect of precipitation coming from a warmer body of water towards an ice sheet. And so I just picked the one that was a good model, but it was also something that supported what I wanted to do. And when you're using And when you're using papers and using models, right? Like models take different things into account, uh, and if you're literate on what they're doing, then you can make an informed choice to kind of pick what you're going for. Oh, okay. Oh, I keep forgetting I can do this. Okay, Okareg. I feel that thing about decisions. I've been having a thinking stage of my project for 10 years. I'm finally at the stage where I feel comfortable putting things on paper. And you'd wish you'd actually started working on it years ago. Yeah, and I hope that showing the footnotes video and like showing my own process of like the sketching and the rough drafts and all that can make it more approachable. I think I did have a comment to the video that, really appreciated seeing that rough work. Because if you're always in the thinking stage, I've had people oh, thank you for popping by and showing your support. Glad to, even glad for a drive-by. Is it Uval cards? I'm gonna go with Uval cards. I do see a lot of world builders who don't actually put it down. Whether you're writing it, whether you're drawing it, whether you're mapping it, just getting it down. Having a sketchbook, having a notebook where you can doodle things, you can write things, you can record things, and except that's not perfect, right? But be willing to do a pass, and I think that's true even with the art. Like this is the first Yale that I worked on. This is actually the first thing that I drew for the projects when I was working on the world building festival stuff. And it was what I could do at the time. I think it looks fine. It's just a snapshot of where I was at and how I was working. But that was 6 months. That's 6 months ago? No, 4 months ago. And then this one was the one I did right after that. I think that looks better. I improved the mountains since then. I figured out how to do mountains. So these mountains are a bit better. And then now, doing the Yale again, I think I've improved, in, creating the form and in rendering. I think the background's definitely better. And I do like the face shields with the horns and stuff a lot more in the new one. But like being willing to like make those choices and putting things down on paper, like the sooner you do that, one, you'll build things up. But two, you also have it to go back to. Like sometimes I write things, sometimes I have an idea of something I want to do, and I don't write it down, and then I forget the idea, and then I scramble for the next few days trying to remember what it is I was doing when I thought it up. Sorry, hydration break. If I don't know if the mic picked that up, but if it did, let me know, and I will mute my mic while I do that. So now we have, oh yes, high pressure. Excellent. So low pressure. We're going to have storms during this period. Those storms are going to be bringing precipitation throughout this basin. The only place that's not going to be getting precipitation, great, is along here. And that is because the low pressure at the intertropical convergence zone, and Jake didn't pick up anything bad. Wonderful. Well, excellent. So the intertropical convergence zone is in the southern hemisphere, and that causes the winds to change, right? Because high pressure systems cause a clockwise motion. Yes, cause a clockwise motion in the northern hemisphere and an anti-clockwise motion in the southern hemisphere. We also have the low pressure systems, which cause an anti-clockwise motion in the northern hemisphere. So as the high pressure system gets closer to the lower pressure, in the northern hemisphere, it starts going from clockwise to anti-clockwise. And when it does that, the winds start moving parallel to that coast, which is where we have that desert that's going to be along here. Now, parts of this desert are going to receive precipitation, especially in the winter here, because you're going to have winds coming off here. So there will be some precipitation received in this region during the winter. We may have some CS areas along the coast. I believe on the climate map, I have a climate map. Yeah, so we do have some CS. We'll see how much of that CS is going to remain. And we have the CS transition here. I think some of that CS region is also going to become... let's look at the July here. Yeah, see, and this is... we do have a lower pressure here, so we could probably have some precipitation coming off, especially orthographic winds. So some of this stuff down here is going to become CFA as well. So we'll see what that turns into. But I do want that strong movement of wind in this direction. But what's important, too, is that we're going to be having winds coming this way, moving towards the low pressure of this Thuringian low here, which is kind of like the low that... it's kind of like the low that South Asia experience. No, South and East Asia, Southeast Asia experience with the Himalayas. So we're going to be having a very strong movement this way of wind. So while we'll probably get some sea along there, what's that right now? Yeah, it's Mediterranean right now. So probably add some F climates along there. But they'll probably stop here and then transition to that Mediterranean. Right, so we have this high pressure system, and this high pressure system is going to really minimize the amount of CF climates, that we're going to be having in a bunch of this area. So I imagine, we may get some CF here, maybe along there, maybe in some of these areas, perhaps in some of the mountainous areas. In some of those regions, but what is happening here, we can get rid of this for a sec, is we've got we've got the Palomars, and then we've got Tyche, and then we've got Arukia there, let's just say, and here we have some of the islands that are in the Tyche. There we go. Right. So what is happening with this high pressure system is that we've got air that is cooling. Can you see that? Yes. So we have air that's cooling coming down. And that cold air, as it cycles in an anticyclone, because it's pushing wind away, is going to be relatively cool, and cooler air is, of course, not going to cause as much evaporation, right? So that little amount of evaporation is not going to create significant precipitation. It's not going to build up, enough moisture in the air around these islands in order to precipitate. That's why we're going to see precipitation, along here, but not on those islands during the summer. Oop. Right, so, but that is also why we are going to have a decent amount of CF. Why is it doing this to me? All right. And I think I may have it already set like that. It's just, here we go. Yeah, so we've got, we got some F climates in that region because they're going to be receiving some precipitation because they're in an area of relatively lower pressure, receiving some of those winds going towards I believe that's the Metride low in the northern hemisphere summer there. All right, so kind of reviewed and got bearings for that. The last thing would be to look at July temperature. All right. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so looking at this map for a moment, we've got, as usual, so we've got the 24-degree isotherm over the ocean there. So all of this in here is going to be 18. So it really is. Okay. Just gotta wait for it to go away. There we go. So so it really is this line down there that is kind of separating the A climates, which is why we have, some of that stuff down there. We're probably going to have more A sneaking in here. It's just because of the low resolution of the last map, and especially because when I was working on this map, I was trying to make the mountains and changes in elevations very prominent. So, we're probably going to see a climate, along this bit here where that doesn't really show itself on the main map, just because some of these lines are much chunkier than they would really be. Okay, let's go back to July temp here. Great. So we got the 18 there, and then the 18 is very closely followed by the 12. Now, I believe that this is, that's a bit of a shift. How much does it shift from that, though? Yeah, it's a little bit. And that is largely due to the hills here. So these hills are causing, the elevation is causing that, partially. The elevation, the ice sheets, and the, just the northerly movement changing in latitude is causing that shift. But yeah, we can blame the mountains for a lot of that. And then the other thing I wanted to look at, so 24, 18, so at sea level, and then this is probably going to be like a pretty stable, 21 degrees throughout this. So some places will end up being, maybe some places will end up being CSA. Probably, maybe in that region, we can have 22, so we can have some CSA, but it'll be a very thin region of CSA, and we're probably not going to have any CSA along here, because that's going to be desert anyway. The main distinction in Köppen-Geiger between CSA and CSB is that a CSA climate has at least 1 month above 22 degrees. That's what a hot summer is. And I guess on this map, yeah, don't see any CSA, which is, which is reasonable, to be fair, especially because especially because of the elevations and stuff I was working at. I may, 24, 23, 22. Yeah, may do 22 there. And just have, that'll be a decision that we'll have to make at some point during the climate study. Where specifically do we want the 22 isotherm to fall? And I will be thinking about during July where those currents are going to be, because we do have a current shift where we do have a gyre going that way in the winter, and no, during the summer, and then the surface winds would change, causing the gyre to move south. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's why so much precipitation along the coasts there, especially in the summer. I was thinking, I knew it was happening. And then we also have cooler waters being cycled out along the coast here, which also contributes to less precipitation and the more arid conditions. So, actually we may see more CS than CF along there. Past Will was really thinking about that stuff. Yeah, so if we have that going that way, then we'd have the stuff circling back. Now, this is an isthmus here. So, no, not an isthmus, sorry. It's like a Gibraltar-esque pass. So we would have, stuff flowing through there. So if we want, there'd probably be some water moving back there as well. But in the summer, we're going to have okay, let me do this on a different layer. I wasn't thinking. Okay, in the summer, we are going to okay. So let's turn these off. And so I would be willing for the 22. We don't have the July temp on for that. Let's change the color. Okay. So for 22, we can certainly have 22 going up here, and then maybe less there, and then we want it maybe along here. Because I do also have some DFA, and let's see where that is. Yeah, there's DFA up along that coast. I was thinking. Excellent. Yeah, so then DFA is going to be, yeah, okay, I like that. That certainly works for having CSA. Okay. There we go. So that could be our, oops, that's the eraser. That is going to be the 22 line. Now we're an hour in. I am going to step away from the chair for a quick moment to fill up my water, and I'll be right back. If I had a chair, the chair would be there. Okay, let's switch over. All right, y'all can look at bookcases for a hot minute. Okay, lands unnoticed back. Oh, what you looking at, Jake? The camels and llamas, I'm guessing, from the ears. Yes, I do have a lot of llamas over here. I think this one is a little flower pot with some succulents in it from my wedding, actually. Got that. The succulents are from the wedding. The llama was afterwards. Yeah, I've got a bunch of different ceramic llamas. Most of the llamas right now are actually in a different room. So later, we will certainly be seeing more llamas. In later streams, sorry, we'll be seeing more llamas. I've got some alpacas and stuff in other places as well. Yeah. Well, some of them are llamas, some of them are alpacas. I got a really fuzzy one. You know what? We'll take a bit of a tangent, a diversion from doing the maps for 1 sec. We'll see how long this cord is. Oh, that's excellent. There we go. I think this one's made of alpaca. Yeah. So this one's alpaca, and he's made of alpaca. So he can go in front of Sophocles and Euripides. Alien Overlord is here. Fantastic. Welcome, Alien Overlord. No vacunas, though. Yes, I don't have any vacunas, and I also don't have any guanacos. I think they're all just llamas. I do have some more. Maybe at some point I'll do a show and tell and show some more llamas. I do have a very big fuzzy one that is up there that I will reveal at a later time. That's true. Yeah, vicuñas they wouldn't shell out. You gotta catch them. You gotta earn their respect like a unicorn. Merchandise. Yeah, I don't think I haven't really seen one. And if I did get one, I would want one with their hair. I guess you have to like collect it off the ground or something like that. They are incredibly fluffy. Yes. Put candles in front of Greek philosophers any day. Yes. For multiple reasons. Especially those that are, end up supporting oligarchs and stuff like that. All right. Had enough of the distraction there. Excellent. There we go. Now I get to rotate. Oh. Oh. Yeah, what was the fun thing about Greek philosophers recently? No, I don't think it was philosophers. I think it was Herodotus. Yeah. Um, you know, I think this is old news, though. I think it just resurfaced. It is old news. There was Scythian artifact that's made out of leather, and it turned out to be made out of human skin. So Herodotus said that the, Aaronic nomads made various things out of human skin, and I guess people frequently assume that Herodotus is exaggerating or making things up because that's something that Herodotus does. We haven't found any giant enemy ants yet. But occasionally Herodotus is in fact reporting something that is true. And because the Greeks frequently, other different peoples they see as barbarians, like, calling somebody a cannibal or saying they make clothing or other, accoutrements, garments out of human skin is, something along those lines. But there are, certainly cultures that engage in trophy taking and, making I think it was a bow case or maybe a quiver, something like that, out of human skin, making the object, the container for the weapons that kill your enemies out of your slain enemies is certainly a flex. Imagine xenophobic hyperbole in the ancient world. Yes. All right, so where were we last? We were figuring out that I, in fact, already considered the movement of warmer waters in and out of the Tyche through looking at the wind currents, and I'm going to be incorporating that to create some CSA regions further on in this study. It's just good to sort of orient yourself before you go a bit deeper. All right, and last, I just want to look at what did I do? Hilarious. All right, I did not have good layer discipline. So what do we got here? So the DFC region there is, of course, a consequence of January temperatures moving in, though I don't think it's real. Yeah, it's not really. Let's put that back on. Yes, it is quite cold. So I think that's the 12-degree line, isn't it? No, that's the 6-degree line. That's in the summer. We got that. I don't think Herodotus makes things up so much. He's very credulous of exotic tales. Well, the thing is, oftentimes we only have Herodotus as the source of this information. So if Herodotus and I was a medievalist, and there are a variety of travel logs in medieval writing where people will write about some far off place, and they'll say, oh, they say, quote unquote, that there are people who only have one leg and one giant foot who hop around everywhere. And that is the earliest attestation of that we have. And then people afterwards, of course, when they're making their own atlases of the world, or they're making their own travel logs, will repeat that information and claim they saw it themselves. Um, so, there is a rhetorical device in a lot of these travel logs, and histories or atlases that are recounting, you know, exotic tales, where they will use the literary or rhetorical device of "I heard it from somebody else" to insert something fantastic. But I also think he is very credulous. That's also true. There are some things that he says that we have earlier sources, or we have other people reporting from an earlier source. So I think it's a bit of both, probably. I think he's, you know, he, making some speculative decisions. At the same time, he's also, oh, somebody told me about something that some Egyptians said, and Egyptians are really old, so they probably have some of the good gossip around the Mediterranean. You think guys having these intelligence discussions on here, my complete lack of tertiary education. Aw. Well, if you go for tertiary education, then that is your not just your career, but also your personality. I fear to say. But I guess I started my undergrad. What years it now? Oh, 17, 18 years ago. And then I've been in graduate school for probably over a decade at this point. There were some times in between where I was like actually working, and not just working in academia, or doing like world building commissions and stuff like that. Let's look at this here. So no, so this line is 12. Oops. I did that incorrectly. Yeah, this line is 12. There we go. So that's 18. Yes, that was my mistake. So that's 18. That is 12. So yes, the 12 is where we have, around the 12 is where we have this thin DFC, which again, because it's a low resolution map, I would probably move it out a bit, because it's a little close now that we're, have this closer view to the to where we would start seeing tundra. It's also a little shifted. All right, that is getting a little annoying. I think this one is closer to the base. Oh, it's not. Okay, let's move that then. There we go. Yeah. It's just notice. That look good? Yeah, it looks good. Good. Okay. Now we gotta do the same with the climate map. I selected the climate map. Okay. Nope. I see what I did. Okay. So the two-finger tap on this does two things. One of it, if you two-finger tap on a layer, it'll open up the opacity. But if you two-finger tap not on a layer, it undoes, which, is very convenient. Actually, I think that one is actually... it's just a little... It's grainy. It's also shifted a little bit. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. Hey, wonderful. Okay, so now if I do my July temp, it lines up very closely with the line. And see, it really shouldn't do that. So when we do this closer study, we need to, so we need to go there and there, probably, for the DF. And that tundra needs to come out more. Because this is our 0 in July. So that is where the ice would come to. And in this map, it's still tundra. That's what happens when you're working at the low resolution and you're working on a global map. So we can come in and make some more definitive choices. And you can see that if you go to where is it? In the footnotes, you can actually see I think figure 11A and B. Figure 11A, figure 11A shows Arukia before I did that close climate study, and then figure 11B shows afterwards. You can see that there's like a pretty reasonable difference between the two, and that's because one I was doing quickly just to get a lay of the land, and the other one I spent a few hours going through it. So are you going to do a high resolution map for the Tyche region? Yes, that is what I'm preparing to do over these streams. Doing the high resolution Tyche map. The next thing I'm going to do is actually outline Tyche, the Tyche Basin, so I can actually start getting to doing the higher resolution work. If I ever go for it, I'll probably enter trade school. High school isn't great for me, so I just gave up on the workforce directly. Hey, I think that is a great thing to do. I think I was working throughout high school and, decided to go into my undergrad. And during my undergrad, I was working the whole time, frequently at a warehouse. I was working nights over the summer in a warehouse. And after my undergrad, I spent a bunch of years working before I did my grad. But I will say that undergrad is very different than high school. What I really liked about undergrad is I got to pick what I was doing. I was like, I get to, read about medieval history and read medieval literature for 4 years, among other things. Learn Latin, Old English, Anglo-Norman, stuff like that. Going to dinner. Thanks for sharing the process with us. Yeah, of course, Jake. Thanks for stopping by. So now we are going to get on it with making our outline. Just want to make sure. So for this outline, I'm going to get rid of the climate layer. Don't need that on at the moment. Yeah. I'm going to have a thinner brush, and I'm just going to go in the inside to kind of capture. And this may be and also you'll notice, and also you may notice that a lot of these formations are very rounded, which, we do sometimes see rounded or straight landforms on Earth, but usually, we're going to have a bit of variation. So, and I'm just using black here to make sure that I, worm my way on the inside, because one thing that can happen when you're doing this is you miss out and make your landforms smaller, which I don't want to do, especially because uh, Basera and Dove in general has less land than Earth, which is another reason why, it's generally a bit more humid than one would expect because we have such a large ocean basins, which is a lot of surface area for massive. I am on my own. Yep, I'm on my own layer. Oops. We've got our own. Yeah, so we've got very large ocean basins, a lot of surface area to form precipitation. "10 years in the warehouse, but fortunately at least 5 were in the office." Hey, that's pretty good. I was receiving, and I was receiving for a hardware company. So, a lot of like nails and a lot of toilets and sinks, I remember, but all sorts of stuff. Got to use a, whatchamacallit, forklift. Got a forklift license. Probably expired, but that was a good time. One thing I think I liked most about working nights was the drive. The drive on the way there, because it was near the airport in Toronto. A lot of factories and stuff and warehouses are near the airport for obvious reasons. So the drive there was a bit of traffic, but in the drive home, I was driving against traffic. There are a couple places that slowed down a bit, but generally driving against traffic. So that was very fun. But working nights definitely messes up your sleep schedule. I would not recommend it if you don't have to. Really gotta take that off. And then what I'm going to do once I finish this all in black is that I will fill it in and make it a base layer and then do a clipping mask. So that when I do the climates, I am doing the climates on top of the mask, so it does not go outside of the landform. So that I don't have to spend all this time, cleaning it up and erasing on the sides and things. If you wanted to work directly on the layer, then you could do an alpha lock. But I am not that brave. I usually use one layer for each climate I'm working with, and I layer them on top of each other, just to create that variation that I want to see. Works better with like erasing and things like that. Otherwise, if you're working on one layer, which I have done before, I've worked on one layer and had all the climates on that one layer. And that project, it was more of, that was just the fun in and of itself. And that was a much higher resolution map, and I spent a lot of time on it. Oh, what do we got here? Receiving employees are cool people. My area at work covers receiving, and I'm friends with most of them. Yeah. No, yeah. Everyone I worked with was cool. have coffee breaks. But I mean, our coffee breaks were, I don't know, I think the shift was like 11:30 to 8 in the morning. So we had like a coffee break, like 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 6 a.m. The worst part was the weekends, because I would essentially just keep my schedule. So I'd sleep from 9 a.m. till 4 or so, 4 or 5, and then be awake for the day, and then be awake throughout the night, just reading. And I didn't really play video games or watch movies at night. It was too easy to fall asleep, because even though I was working nights throughout the week, your body does not like it. And birds were the worst of working nights. Because birds would start chirping while I was trying to go to bed. And I like birds, but I also like sleeping. And I've never heard so many birds tweeting as I did while I was working nights. So here, where I'm living now, I tend to notice the birds in the evening. They're tweeting in the was it the twilight, dusk, I suppose. And that's usually during the summer here. And this outline, again, is just for the alpha lock. I can always change it later, as I go in and start creating coastal geomorphology and stuff like that. But this is going to be, and then the other thing I also want to do is kind of create some more islands. So like what's been happening, just to take a bit of a, okay, we're going to name this. It wants me to write, and then it doesn't let me. Okay, outline. All right. So what has been happening here? If we just take a moment. Hey, Tabby. My mom has feeders on her window, and I get a dawn chorus of my on my windowsill every morning. Hey, if it, for me, that may encourage me to help get out of bed. So I may change that, especially in the winter here. Like here in the winter, especially because it's raining all the time, a CSB climate, it is like cloudy and dark. It can be cloudy and dark all day. Whenever I want to record or work at my desk, it tends to be very bright and sunny. But when I'm out and about, it tends to be dark and cloudy. And like the sun will set in the winter here, like 4:30. So it's dark all the time. So some of that seasonal, affective disorder can really creep in. But oh my goodness, mine birds in the morning is very cute. Are they like chickadees and stuff like that, or what kind of birds do you get? What was I doing? Oh yeah, so what's been happening is there is a subduction zone along here that has been pulling in ocean crust, right? And that's building up the Metrades here. That's the, metride orogeny. And it's been ripping off chunks from Lanea over here. And we have this chunk got ripped off, and there was a mid-ocean ridge here, and that mid-ocean ridge shut down, and then a new one opened up here, and this portion got chomped off, and the subduction continued. But like this subduction zone has not stopped, and so the mid-ocean ridge at this point is, like in there, and so you have, or over, yeah, it's like kind of in there, and so the mid-ocean ridge is mostly just kind of pushing out from this region. It's just sort of spreading this way. We're not getting much in the way of spreading in the other direction, because this is moving, I don't know, very slowly, a few centimeters to the north, like very slow movement. Meanwhile, this is moving much quicker, so the mid-ocean ridge is kind of spreading slowly. It's kind of, moving this way as it spreads, kind of, feeding this way. These mountains were kind of built up by the MOR spreading and colliding with the coast as it was building out, and that orogeny, and was one of the reasons why the MOR shut down and then opened up on the other side. Oh, excellent. Tabby says wrens, tits, and robins. Beautiful. Wrens, I think, there's some really pretty wrens, especially some of the yellow and green ones. I've been looking at wrens recently for some inspiration for some of the flying creatures for Dove, which are going to be revealed in the video. That is going to be a special surprise. Hey, sorry, quick question. Hey, Aaron, of course. When following Artifacts tutorial for climates, I end up with mostly monsoon climates when I try to make my winters wet. Is there any way to fix that? Yes. Yeah, sure. All right, so do I have this? That's the pressure map. I have older maps here. I don't really have any newer maps. I mean, this will work. I think this will work. Yeah. This will work. This is more or less what we're working with. So, this is winter, right? And this is the summer. So, in the summer, it is very easy. Let's pop this up, as long as it doesn't cover anything important. So, in the summer, it's very easy to get precipitation on your continents, right? Because the continents are going to have low pressure over them. So if we look at Zalea here, we're going to be having a lot of precipitation coming in all throughout here, right? No problem getting precipitation in the summer. But in the winter, we've got high pressure systems. So we've got, and for example, yes, and we've got high pressure systems. So this is something that could produce some issues where you're not going to get you're not going to be able to model precipitation on the west coast. But do I have? Oh, I don't have climate. Okay, let's find a different map then. Or I may have to bring it up on the computer instead. Yeah, this is just... All right, I'll bring it up on the computer. Give me a sec. Great. I'm just going to open up Photoshop and share my most recent Photoshop file. But what we can do for making sure that East Coasts get precipitation is to remember low pressure systems that are moving through during the winter that generate a decent amount of precipitation. So let's turn this off. Great. And you can't see what I'm doing because I haven't shifted it over yet. So let me do that right now. Share screen, share screen. Allow. All right. Add to stage. Okay. Remove. Add to stage. Voila. All right. So make sure to layer, to name all your layers. That is very important. So with our, let's turn off my ephemera here. We got some precipitation going on. That was old. It's very old. So there are a couple things to keep in mind. When you are doing your winter precipitation, you're going to have high pressure and you're going to have winds kicking up, southerly winds kicking up and bringing precipitation over. So that's one thing that you can think about is the westerly portion of your precipitation. No, sorry, the westerly portion of your high pressure zones. You also want to think about the shape of your landmass. The shape of your landmass may not facilitate much moisture coming in from the east or the south, and that's where your precipitation is going to be coming from. So, you do want to think about the land masses for that. The other thing to consider is also low pressure storms. So this is not moving around very well, but what we are going to have, and you'll be able to see my mouse, they're going to be the formation of low pressure systems in the north, and here we have them forming along the where the sea ice meets the Aphrodite, because the sea ice has a high albedo, the Aphrodite has a lower albedo. The Aphrodite, the surface temperature of the sea, so the sea surface temperature, SST, is going to be significantly warmer than the surface temperature of the sea ice. And that temperature difference is going to produce these low pressure systems where your two high pressure systems meet. These low pressure systems are then going to come down the coast. They're going to be rotating and coming down your eastern coasts of continents. When that happens, it is going to be creating CS. It is going to be creating like a DF or CF region. I'm going to look at where's the Wikipedia Köppen Geiger climate classification map here. So we are going to remove, stop screen, share screen. There we go. Allow. Jump over here. All right. So you should be able. Nope. Boom. All right. This should take a sec to pop up. What's going on? Here we go. So, what's going on in North America, for example, is that the high pressure system is moving precipitation north from the Gulf of Mexico. So we're able to have, this, because it's moving the wind this way, it's coming along here, and then it's coming back up, right? So you have this circulation system. So you have southeasterly winds moving clockwise, bringing precipitation from the Gulf of Mexico up through up through North America, through the United States, and through Canada. So that is what's happening here. That is how we get a lot of these CF climates. We also have storms, winter storms, low pressure systems developing up here and then moving down the coast on the east coast. We have a similar thing happening over here as well. We get a lot of low pressure storms developing up here and bringing precipitation to the Pacific Northwest and to like Alaska. For East Asia, what is happening is that there is a very strong anticyclone, and that is being developed by the Siberian High. So if you have a very large continent that is hypercontinental, that is going to have a high pressure system, a strong high pressure system in here, then you are necessarily going to get less precipitation in there because you have this high pressure system that is, shooting out a lot of cold air. And we can see, for South Asia, Southeast Asia, for Northeast Asia, and for a lot of China here, we have W climates, just kind of bound to happen. But during the winter, we also have these low pressure systems that move through, and these storms move precipitation into the landmass. So it is going to be rotating this way. It's going to be rotating counterclockwise, and it is going to be shooting some precipitation over the continent. One thing to keep in mind, though, when we're talking about W climates, it is a very specific amount of precipitation you need in order for it to be a dry winter, wet summer climate. And if we go back to Wikipedia here, it should just give it to us. It should just tell us what NW climate is. Here we go. At least 10 times as much rain in the wettest month of summer as the driest month of winter. So in order for you to have a W climate, there needs to be at least 10 times the amount of precipitation in summer as the driest month of winter. So when you're thinking about your replacement for your W climates, you want to think about regions that are going to be very dry during the winter, like exceptionally dry. So when we look at the Köppen map, and we can still see that, yes we can. So when we're looking at this Köppen map, these areas in here, because of the effect of the Siberian High, are experiencing exceptionally dry winters, and because of the monsoon, very, very, very wet summers. This area in here receives precipitation during the winter, and it receives oftentimes, especially in the interior, just enough, just barely enough for it to be considered a CF climate, right? Like if it receives, 400 millimeters of precipitation in the wettest summer month, and it receives 41 millimeters of precipitation in the driest winter month, then it's an F climate. It's not W climate. So like that's kind of what you want to think about on the East coasts, where this is usually the W situation tends to happen. So my two recommendations would, one be considering the orientation of your land masses, like if you have a Gulf of Mexico or something like that, where you can get precipitation from high pressure. That is wonderful. The other thing to consider is the low pressure storms that are moving through, and how those would bring precipitation. Yeah. Boop. And let's add that one. Remove stage. Add to stage. Is there going to be very little rainforest and forest in general because of the Ice Age climate? And if so, there'll probably be a mammoth steppe region to support lots of megafauna. Yeah, so we are going to have lots of megafauna, and there are going to be regions that have a lot of forests. The areas that have the considerable amount of precipitation are going to be able to support forests and rainforests. Something that we see pretty frequently in the last glacial maximum is that you do have pockets of forest amongst the steppe and the kind of grasslands and shrublands. But they do have to receive more precipitation than they normally would. Going back to, can I just bring up a climate map? Yeah, let's bring a climate map and share that. Stop screen. Share screen. So, two reasons I brought this up. One is to address the W question, the wet summer, dry winter climates. And the other one is to mention where we're going to see some rainforests. So, as we can see over here, we do have a lot of W climates, and we have the W over here as well. These ones are DW because the precipitation that's coming off of the Agathie and the Tyche is more oriented to the north and then into here during the winter. In the winter it is the winds are moving this way and then deflecting over here. These winds from the Agathie are coming in down there, and the high pressure system that's moving precipitation across this region runs out of steam by the time it hits this upland region that separates the desert from the eastern Launea on the Agathie and the Tyche. But these regions, this strip along here, receives precipitation pretty consistently, but that's because of the warmer waters that are moving along here throughout the year. I mean, there's cooler water here in the summer, but there's warm water in the winter moving up here, and that's because of the seasonal change in surface winds changes the surface currents in the northern Tyche. Here we can see that there's a distinction between the DF and DW, and that is because the high pressure system, the anticyclone, is shooting warm, moist winds this way in the winter. But because of the Metrades here, we do have this pocket of W climate, and we also have this pocket down here of W climates because they're not getting any of that precipitation. That's especially from the Tyche in the winter, because it's being blocked by the Metreides. The other thing to consider as well is that we have the ice sheet here, and any winds that are coming from the north, these northerly winds coming down, are going to be exceptionally cold and exceptionally dry, because the sublimation of the ice doesn't provide that much moisture, and cold air holds less moisture than warm air, so not much coming off that. So yeah, I really consider, if you're having those W climates show up, orientation of your land masses, how you can use the high pressure systems to get some moisture in there, as well as considering winter storms, right? And really understanding that these W climates need 10 times more precipitation in the summer than the driest winter month in order to be considered a C or D or AW climate. And then the next bit we had was about, oh my goodness, I wasn't sharing that whole time. I was showing a map. Ugh, awful. Thank you, Luna. Can't see anything. Oh my goodness. All right, so very quickly, we have the DW region here, and this DW region is created because the winds in the winter moving this way have run out of steam by the time they reach these highlands that separate western Lanea from eastern Lanea. And then these pockets of W over here are created because there are southeasterly winds that are coming up clockwise. Should be able to see that now. Yes. Southeasterly winds are moving clockwise, and they just move through this area here. They don't touch in here. We also have the ice sheets here, and any winds coming down here from the ice sheet are going to be very cold and very dry, because the sublimation of ice doesn't produce that much moisture, and cold air coming off the ice sheet doesn't hold very much moisture in it as warm air would. So when we're thinking, and then of course, we have those low pressure systems that are be rolling through and bringing some precipitation to this area as well. But for why we have this long, strip of W climates in this area is because during the winter, the precipitation off of the Tyche is moving to the southeast, and off of the Agathie, it is moving to the southwest. So we're not getting much precipitation in the summer in those regions. And yeah, I apologize about that. I'm still getting used to the streaming software, making sure that everything's up. Yes, fantastic. And thank you, Luna, for bringing that up. And is there going to be very little rainforests? So there are going to be rainforests, especially in these equatorial regions, with precipitation all year round. So we're going to see rainforests, extensive rainforests, in the tropical regions of Elea and Lanea. We're also going to see some rainforests in the peninsula down here and along these island chains leading to Arukia. On Arukia, we are going to have rainforests in the south here, in this peninsula, as well as along the northern ridge, sort of the Ciscoterine peninsula of Arukia. We're going to see rainforests in here and along the coast of Zalea. So there are going to be rainforests. However, in a lot of the monsoonal regions and in these S and W regions, where we could very well on Earth expect forests, like a lot of forests, we're not going to see very dense forests. I mean, there may be forests in upland regions and hills. There are going to be forests in valleys. So we're going to see a lot of riparian forests, so forests along the sides of rivers, um, forests in depressions or basins where moisture is allowed to accumulate. But there's going to be like scattered forests, so more steppe environments. Um, and yeah, and so we're going to see more forests in the F regions, but even in these northern F regions up here, the forests are going to be scattered, right? Like it gets very cold. There's not going to be enough precipitation to offset the lack of CO2 and the temperature. So again, there's going to be less forests. So a lot of the D regions are going to be very sparse as far as trees are concerned. And in the A and CW regions, we're also going to see, more shrublands, grasslands. Yeah, so that's going to be the gist of it. Though the way that a lot of the flora on Arukio works, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be it's going to be a little interesting. So we'll see that. I got a couple things I need to catch up on. Let's go back to here. I've got a bunch of comments. Okay, so would you consider doing a full video on pressure and precipitation? When Edgar did the redux of his pressures, he just directed us to Madeline's tutorial, which I feel is worded too vaguely. Yeah, and Madeline's tutorial as well doesn't take into effect the low pressure systems. So again, I think Madeline, has said that for her method, she's primarily aiming it towards writers who want to spend a bit more time in their world building. So, but it is not like, she doesn't endeavor for it to be like thorough and detailed as possible. As I mentioned at the end of the footnotes video, or at some point during the footnotes video, adding in low pressure systems and cyclones in addition to anticyclones is really helpful, both for Will Building Pasta's Apple Pie from Scratch, as well as Madeline's guide to help provide some different outputs. But I am considering doing the full video tutorial. That'll probably be an appendix video, and the way I have things planned out right now, at the end of this month, or early February, I'm going to get the first Spec Evo Biogeography one out. And then at the end of March, will be the second video for that. And then May will be the third one. And then after May, so the next video after the May one will be the appendix, where I'm thinking of doing the guide for how to do precipitation and surface winds and how I work through that. I mean, if you follow these live streams, then I'll be explaining the process and working through it, but they're not necessarily a guide. It's more like a work with me. And I did the redux for Edgar's pressure, so if you kind of look at that. I also helped Bibloridian as well with Tira, so you can also check out Bibloridian's introduction to Tira's climate map, which I believe he did on his second channel, so you may have to search that out a little bit. Writer 2, you made it! Fantastic. And not a moment too soon. Tabby, you end up guessing cyclones just for fun. Look at what Will agreed is right guide would be great. Yeah, so that is definitely world, not video. Fun World. Oh yes, for your Fun World, just for Fun World. Yeah. Well, hey, just for Fun Worlds are excellent. I have made just for Fun Worlds before to test things out and troubleshoot and figure things. So I totally recommend just for Fun Worlds. Yeah, so I am doing an appendix in, I guess, July. And one of the contenders for that is definitely the precipitation and surface winds guide, where I will lay out how to go through that process. However, it will be up to members to vote on what they would like to see. They can, which will happen on Patreon and Ko-fi. I believe I have a couple patrons who are of that rank now. I think there's, what is it? Adventurer, Traveler, and Explorer. So it's the second one. You get to vote on appendix videos. So I'm going to start opening up the voting for that, I think, after the next video. So, you know, I think that one has a decent chance of happening. I've got a couple comments asking for that one. But, and I think, you know, as far as YouTube metrics goes, I think that one would do very well. So that's the one I'm leaning towards. But yeah, we'll see. How much time do we have left? Well, I think we're at the 2-hour mark. Yeah, so I think that'll be, I think we'll end it off here working on the outline of the Tyche. I think I'll finish the outline at some time this week, so that next time when we come back, I will start working through some close attention to precipitation. I'll talk more about how I measure precipitation and the heuristic I use to model it. So for people who are interested in seeing that, this may, you know, slate your thirst until then. I'm also going to be, there we go. Yeah, so that'll be the process that I will be working through next time. As always, if you want to stay up to date and want to know when the lives are going to come out, I always post them in advance to the Patreon and to the Ko-fi. Hello, Kairos. Kairos? You came just in time for the end of the video, the end of the live stream at least. Yeah, so you can always follow for free. I believe on Patreon and Ko-fi, you can get the newsletters for when I'm going to be doing lives in advance. I'll also post up to a week in advance when the next video is going to be coming out, and anyone with the Explorer tier can check it out when it's unlisted before it's public. If you you're more of a rewatch guy, excellent. If you want to support the channel, you know, throw me a like. If you haven't, you can subscribe. Comments really help as well under the videos. And if you want to continue supporting the Speculative Atlas and the work that I'm doing, you can drop me a one-time donation on Ko-fi, or you can sign up to be a member. There are 3 different tiers on Patreon or Ko-fi, depending on what works for you. They each have little little benefits. I think the base one includes behind the scenes look, where I post updates that shows some of the art that I've been working on and what I'm thinking about leading up to the next video. You can also make suggestions for footnotes and little questions that you'd like me to address in those footnote videos for the basic rank. Anyway, that'll be it for today. Thank you so much to everyone who joined me for the stream today, and I will see you next Sunday on January 13th. Yes, January 13th, while I finish my outline and we continue doing the close climate study of the Tyche Basin. Yeah, thank you. Have a great day as well, Writer2. Yeah, well, you're welcome for the stream. Have a great day, everyone.